Okay, so yeah, it made me sound like someone who knows everything about everything. But so we're all here to learn about social enterprises and how to invest in them jointly. And welcome you all. Thank you so much for coming from all corners of India on a 2 weeks notice when we warmly invited you all over WhatsApp. So thanks very, very much.
अस्सलामु अलैकुम, मैं ज़मीर अहमद अंसारी और आप देख रहे हैं जेड न्यूज़ फॉर यू। अर्ज यह है कि आपने अपने चैनल जेड न्यूज़ फॉर यू को अभी तक सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया है तो सब्सक्राइब करें और साथ में दिए हुए बेल आइकन को भी दबाएं, जिससे हमारी आने वाली सभी वीडियोस के नोटिफिकेशन सबसे पहले आपको मिल सकें।
Livelihood, community health support, gender neutrality, etc. It is after successfully executing the first cohort, which incubated unique 18 startups by providing funding support, networking opportunities, along with mentoring. We all are here at the launch of second season of Social Trailblazer at this conclave. I would take this opportunity to announce that the launch of the Social Trailblazer program will take place in the evening and will be graced by Honorable Union Minister of Education, Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Shri Dharmendra Pradhan ji. Before the launch, it is with shared commitment we have assembled here today to forge connections and foster synergies that will shape the trajectory of social entrepreneurship. This event showcases the boundless potential of leveraging business acumen and innovations for the greater good, empowering us to tackle the most pressing challenges of the time. Throughout this conclave, we will witness the convergence of social impact and financial viability as startups present their groundbreaking ideas and ventures to potential investors and venture capitalists. Together, we'll explore investment opportunities that not only yield substantial returns but also leave a lasting positive impact on our society and the planet. On behalf of organizing committee, I extend my gratitude to each and every one of you for joining us here today. Your presence here underscores your unwavering dedication to social entrepreneurs, highlighting your commitment to build more equitable and sustainable future. Now let us embark on this incredible journey together, fueling innovation, sparking transformative ideas, and propelling the collective efforts of investors, startups, and social entrepreneurs. Maybe this conclave serve as a catalyst for change, igniting the spirit of social enterprise within all of us. Thank you, and let us commence this remarkable event. I would like to invite Dr. Rafi, MD and CEO of IRMA LIC Foundation for opening remark. Sir, it was his persistent effort which made the first year of cohort a successful one. Sir, please be here.
Good morning, everyone, and a warm welcome to everyone here. In this, audience, we have social enterprises, startups. We have people from the investment domain, both impact investing and normal investing. We have people from the policy, and we also have people who are a part of the CSR ecosystem. One thing which one forgot to tell is that I'm also a professor at IRMA, which is my primary role, and MD Isee is one of the other things that I do, though I think it is taking over as a major role now. First of all, I would actually want to talk about our institution, which is IRMA. IRMA was set up by Dr. Pudian with the objective of providing managers to the rural economy, and we have been doing it for the last 42 years, more than 42 years now. I believe the oldest form of social enterprise would be of cooperatives, and one of the most successful cooperatives is Amul or GCMMF, which has grown with the support of IRMA. We have been providing managers for Amul for a very long time. And if anyone understands social entrepreneurship space, I don't think there's anyone better than IRMA. ISEED was formed. ISEED, which is our social enterprise incubator, has been there for more than 6 years now. However, we decided to formally enter into the incubation space by converting ISEED into a Section 8 company around 2 years back. And the first cohort that we released or that we launched was the LIC HFL Social Trailblazer program with the support of LIC HFL, who has been our partner in this. The first cohort was, the focus was on livelihoods and livability, and our aim was to support 20 social enterprise startups, and we have been supporting 20 social enterprises, and we have funded 11 of them. Though we had thought that we would fund around 8 to 10, but somehow we could not leave a few of them out of our cohort, and we decided to support 11 of them. Those enterprises are here today, so I would request the community from the investment to kind of have a look at our startups. Maybe they will find some opportunity for investment as well. The second cohort is what we are launching today. I strongly believe that if we want to bring in development at fast pace in our country, one of the ways of going or doing this is through our social enterprise ecosystem. And this is something which we have been trying to put forward at all places. In fact, we have tried to take it up with the administration of the country as well, the ones who matter, that is the IS officers and the administrators across the country. We have ensured that our social enterprises are able to go to LBSNA and present what they are doing to the administrators, which has actually kind of ensured that the administrators also understand how their development agendas can be taken care of by those enterprises. And this is what our aim is, to ensure that we are able to take them to all the parts of the country. One of the other things that we have done is we have partnered with livelihood representatives. We have Mr. Sansad Tripathi here. Some of our social enterprises are experimenting and trying to work in the rural areas of Odisha as well. So there are 3 of our social enterprises who are now working in Odisha, which again is a very difficult area. Now it is a win-win for both livelihood representatives and our social enterprises. One, the farmers, the FPOs would be able to get support from our social enterprises, and there will be new market for our enterprises as well. So we also have the farmers and the people from Odisha here. They are actually heading the FPOs. They are there in these rural parts where our startups are working with them. So this is basically about the program. I would also like to say here that we are not here to support only our social enterprises, but we would want to ensure that we are able to build up this ecosystem of social enterprises, because that is what can help our country to a large extent. There are 3 things that we are trying to do here today. One, we will be having a panel of people from the investment domain, a panel of enterprises who have been successful and who have been able to scale up, which can actually provide inputs to the startups and enterprises who are here. And third, we would also be launching our second cohort of LIC HFL program, which will happen in the evening by the Honorable Minister of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. So this is the plan for today. Along with that, I'm sure it's an opportunity to kind of learn from each other. We have more than 30 enterprises here. I think the cross learning can be great. Apart from that, we also have people from the development space. So for example, we have Sandeep from BIF. BIF is one of the best development organizations that we have in the country. So there can be ways by which you can collaborate with them, so maybe we can get in touch with him. We have Arun from SST, Srinivasan Service Trust, and a lot of other people from the foundations and development organizations. So we have an ecosystem here where we can try to look at ways by which we can collaborate with each other. So, and that is the objective of this social enterprise conclave. Thank you so much. Look forward to interacting with all of you, and hope to see many of the enterprises here applying in our second cohort of LIC HFL Social Trailblazer program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the insights you presented. Now I would like to invite Mr. he is a CSR in charge of LIC HFL. It is because of the coordination and cooperation extended by LIC HFL, Social Trailblazer cohort crossed several milestones. Mr. Arjun has played an instrumental role and always supported entrepreneurs' development. Please join me to hear his insights on how collaborative efforts of incubation centers and CSRs can act as enabler for establishing entrepreneurial ecosystem. Welcome you, sir.
Morning. Respected dignitaries, when we were thinking of having a social startup innovation, we were also thinking in 2019 the existing practices of convergence as well as the conventional practice of NGOs funding has to be renovated. And in that space, my management was very, very clear that this will help long-term journey and it has to be a deep-rooted understanding on this space. So we were a small organization in the beginning and we are part of LIC Housing and we have a national bidding track record. So credibilities and critical risk was also been taken care of by management. So we were partnering with IRMA, the organization who has helped us understanding the terrain and developing the scenarios for our requirements and develop the models which we currently is fulfilling the first cohort. So over the year, it has been able to see very fruitful applications as well as the incubations which IRMA has done has yielded some grassroots impact. There are a handful of startups has able to raise multiple level of funding, which help us also to get more confidence on the startup, and we are going to the second stage. So currently with our conventional practice, we have been outreaching to 9 lakhs beneficiary directly, and we are touching around 13 lakhs indirect beneficiaries in the larger framework of the country on multiple indicators. But on the social index, which we were thinking like we need to push a sustainable model, and I think now we are very much concentrated with the idea how to do this with the partnership with IRMA. I appreciate the first cohort applicants, not just about the 20 startups that we have scaled down, but the applicants who were applied for 300 number of startups in the beginning. So they were very much, I think we have spent something around 1.5 months in scaling down to scale 50 number of startups. So it was the joint effort of IRMA as LIC Housing and other supply chain ecosystem developers. That sort of a rigorous process was done, and through that now we have we expect we will be having very good numbers coming in through the impact side. There are multiple startups which we are already doing. We want to understand and scale this to the next level. Happy with being part of with such social startups who are making such a change, that innovative change. It is not like the social development agencies are doing. This ecosystem also has helped us in understanding that. Thank you for giving us such an opportunity, sir. One more thing, we also started reaching out to multiple B schools in the starting, Tier 1 B schools. The response from those big schools was very much not into the mark, where IRMA was outstandingly coming in front and giving us that sort of help. That was a confidence we felt like this will crack us this day. So on a regular interaction, I was asking Rafi sir on the other side, I want this type of interaction, and through some or the other facilitation he has made this day. Thank you the entire IC and IRMA, all the pillars who has helped in making this day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for presenting your insights about the program. Now let us welcome Ms. Anisha Vaswani, partner at Majority Funds. She has been associated with the startup industry since 15 years and is experienced in promoting the startups from grassroots. It's her insights on impact investments made this collaboration of Majority Funds and IC a success in hosting this event. Please join me in giving her
Thanks, Suman, for making this happen. First of all, I think we should all congratulate ourselves that we made it happen. We made it here. Big round of applause for everyone. Thanks so much to the IRMA Isee team and the LIC HFL team for conceptualizing the program last year. Literally a year ago, I was just looking back at my Google photos. 1 year and 1 week ago, we were all in Anand for the first version of this conclave. Much smaller event when we took off. And it's really heartening to see where it's come in a year's time. So, phenomenal, good job. So in terms of what we do at Majority a little bit and where the two organizations fit in pretty well together. Majority is an impact fund that looks at improving livelihoods for people who earn under 15,000 rupees a month or less. I normally ask this question to typical audiences, but with a social enterprise audience, I'm afraid everybody will know the answer. What do you think? What percentage of India earns, say, 25,000 rupees a month or more? Anyone? What percentage of Indians earn more than 25,000 rupees a month?
Household income or individual?
Household? Sunan, थोड़ा सा उससे समझो.
15%.
15%. Close.
7 to 8%. 7 to 8%.
You're kind of converging towards the answer. About 10 years ago when the survey was last done, if you earned more than 25,000 rupees a month, you were in the top 25% of India, what we call a quartile. You were in the top quartile of India. Now, if you earn more than 25,000 rupees a month, you are in the top decile of India. 90% of India earns less than 25,000 rupees a month. And there are sections of this country that will spend that much over a single meal, which we shall not go into. But the point is, that's where we came in. We said if a problem affects 90% of 1.3, 1.4 billion people, the solution has to involve a combination of factors. And that's where these three words that you see on the stage, it has to be scalable at first. A solution that will change the lives of 20, 30, 50,000 people. I mean, it's phenomenal and we really need to do a lot of those as well. But for the group in this room, the problem statement that we want to leave you with is, what can we do to change the lives of a few million people? Can your solution help 50 lakh, 1 crore, 10 crore people in a few years? And that's where I think jointly want to talk about supporting those solutions. Because otherwise, it's great to have. I mean, as an individual, if you have been able to change, or as a startup, you've been able to change the lives of 50,000 farmers or fishermen or whatever, street vendors, forever. It's a phenomenal thing. Changing one life is already big enough. Changing 30, 50,000 people is great. But it's not what India needs today. If you look at the numbers, again, another number to kind of keep in mind. 13 million people, 13 million people turn 18 years old each year. That means this country needs 13 million new jobs each year. And it has for the last decade or so. Obviously, there is almost no other way forward besides entrepreneurship in order to create that level of, I'm not even talking about prosperity, we're just talking about basic existence. Otherwise, we continue to see these stories that we see in the newspapers every time. Every time the Indian Railways comes out with one set of new jobs, you'll see one story. I remember Ravi had done a story of a few years ago, and every year the newspapers will cover this. The Railways has released 1.25 lakh jobs, 1.35 lakh jobs, which is a phenomenal number in and of itself. But if you put it like on the denominator of 13 million, it suddenly starts to mean nothing. But still, you see the demand for those jobs when you see the number of people applying. Give or take, about 100 people apply for every job that is released. So if there are 1.25 lakh jobs or 1.35 lakh jobs, 1.25 crore applications will come. So that's the point. We have to change collectively. Every single one of us needs to work in tandem to ensure that we're working in the right direction to change that picture for the better and not at some unspecified, undefined point of time. And which is why we're saying scale fast. And still at the same time, hold your purpose to your heart. And in some sense, the profit part is critical. Again, this is something I said at IRMA last year and I'll repeat it. If your purpose is the reason for your existence, it's the profit that will allow you to exist. You have a problem statement in mind that's keeping you awake at night, whatever it is, whether it's the climate or whether it's women's empowerment or whether, we have 17 SDGs. But whatever is the problem that's keeping you awake, if you don't have enough money to exist, you will be trying to solve that problem on someone else's terms, some donor, something or the other. The moment you can find a profitability or a method to create profitability while solving the same problem, you're solving the problem at your own terms, trying to create scale and literally making a dent in the universe. In the startup ecosystem, and I was in the startup ecosystem on the for-profit side for 14-15 years, and this is also a for-profit side, so but for clarification, so like I said, I was at Make My Trip, I was at Tata Play, I was at Airtel Money, where we were always told to chase scale, which is great, but scale for scale's sake. Trying to help improve the lives of someone sitting in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore. Trying to do a Zepto, a Danzu. I am not at all throwing shade on anyone's efforts. For sure, those are all needed. But do we need to continue to solve the 5-minute, 10-minute grocery problem when 90% of India is not making enough to put body and soul together? That's the point. It's the smart folks that need to come out there and solve the problem in a profitable way for enough people in India for it to even show up as a difference. That's what unless we have, and we have Karthik speaking later in the day, who's been able to take Jumbo Tail to that point. We were speaking yesterday about what we could also talk about, and a lot of the speakers that we've been talking to over the last few days. And everybody, I think that discontent with status quo is a characteristic of startups. We try to make something new because we don't like the way the world is today. Now, can we make that something new with the intent of, our targets being, world-class? The same targets as a Byju's or whatever, but also trying to improve lives at the same time. So that's where Majority basically came in. In terms of background, I used to be with the World Food Program Innovation Accelerator. I used to be based out of Munich earlier. And there we were trying to solve SDG 2, which is zero hunger. And somewhere the point was that, the reason why Majority even exists is because we came to the realization that most people can solve their own problems if they have enough cash. So zero hunger is great, equality, better life in our oceans, all of that is great. But if you give people enough money, they can solve most of their problems. So the core SDG to probably solve is zero poverty, which is where I think we came in. And with IRMA, we found a great partner when we heard about the Social Trailblazer program, where in some sense we are supporting the same sort of startups through different steps of the journey. Where if at a social trailblazer, the more earlier stage startups can receive a combination of mentorship, market access, partnerships and capital. We can come along later in the journey to provide more of that. And all of us have been doers, not just thinkers. So, and been in the, literally have founded organizations 10, 20 years ago. So we can take you through the journey, and that's what we promised through Trailblazer and afterwards as well. That we've been where you've been. Just today we were talking about ROC issues, okay, MCA, this filing, that filing. We've been through everything you've been through. So the point is, can we collectively help startups grow faster than they could have done without our intervention? So that's the intent of the program. Welcome you all. So it wouldn't end without a call to action. The website is irmasocialtrailblazer.in. If you haven't already applied for edition 2, please do so. The website is still secretly open even though it's not been officially inaugurated. Okay. So we are waiting a little bit for our next panelist, Rajiv Suri of Rice Ventures is a little stuck because of a late flight arrival. So we'll take a short break. You guys can get some tea, coffee, network, and we'll come back in 10 minutes. See you. All the best.
He has given you some kind of enlightenment to be in this panel. So we are talking about something very important, and we just had an opening remark that impact investing is primarily serving the 90% of the Indian population. That's the way we are describing how impact investing works. So kind of taking a step back, like impact investing started out like in early 2000, like we're talking about the impact investing as a term coined in 2005. And at the time, India was just scratching the whole thing. Like when I started my whole journey, like if I say 2007, it was like $40 million sector. Today it is around $7 billion impact investing sector. But still it is very, very small if we compare the mainstream investment in startups that we are talking about. So while we say that we are catering to the masses, but at the same time, we are still not being able to attract the kind of capital that we are talking about, which is coming in the mainstream startups and the scalability as well. So there have been few anomalies in terms of like scale, but still it is not a very, I would say, kind of a aspirational sector to have our young kids getting into it or young innovations getting into this, even though we are talking about lots of stories coming in and lots of different inspirational, I would say, juggernauts which are kind of moving into this whole sector. So we are just with this focus panel, we are trying to kind of demystify what is impact investing all about, and also talking about why it is different from mainstream and can there be convergence coming in or not. So maybe we can start with introductions first. Raji, Anshu first. Yes.
Can you hear me correctly or do I need to use the mic?
Yes.
Hi guys, I'm Anshu Bhartiya. I have had 17 years corporate experience and last 12 years in the development sector, where I started ekdam from like private sector straight to NGOs, and then a convergence for me happened when I joined Unlimited India. I was supporting social enterprises and NGOs, and a few of you in the room have been incubated. In fact, Nihar sitting right in the back has been incubated by Unlimited India. And in March I quit. Difficult environment, we are an NGO ourselves, FCRA and the works. And it's a question we asked a lot of our NGOs, saying, can you create impact only by being an NGO? It is important, NGOs play a role. And so I'm at that juncture where I'm trying to see, only as an NGO can I create impact, or can I do something more foundational and supportive to the impact sector? And one of them is I've just started an initiative called Formity, which is going to be helping startups in process management and setting up systems so you can scale faster. And that's day one of that organization. So with that, I'm happy to be here.
Good afternoon. This is Shaboni. I lead communications and marketing for Omnivore. I am an airman as well. So yay, very happy, very proud to be here. So I started my career as a development consultant, and I am a journalism graduate as well. And currently I'm working in a space which I never thought I will, and now I don't think I'll ever leave, because it is so interesting what agriculture, the way agriculture in India is actually progressing, and I hope to talk more about it in the panel today.
Hi, I'm Amrit from Acumen. Acumen is basically used for Hello. So I'm Amrit, I'm from Acumen. Acumen is an impact fund. Basically, it's a US-based 501c company, and we have offices across 7 geographies, and we have individual investment teams across these 7 geographies, and India is one of them. So, Acumen, in fact, coined the term patient capital when impact investment was not even coined. So that's how we started, and then we started in India around 2005, and since then we have been investing in India actively. Prior to 2019, our focus was impact first anything. It was sector agnostic. Post 2019, we kind of limited our scope to 3 major sectors: agri, workforce, and productive use of energy. And so, personally, I'm in investment space for the last 10 years, but in impact space, it's been close to 3 years, I can say, but it's been really exciting journey so far. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Should I wait for the hum to kick off?
And also,
Hello, this is Rajiv. Rajiv. I am with RISE, which is a venture capital fund. We don't call ourselves impact, but actually I think there's a lot of impact happening with venture capital, and I've myself been a part of a couple of big impact stories myself. But we are about $300 million in size at this point in time. The most recent fund is about 125. We've made about 100 plus investments, have about 3 or 4 unicorns. We've got companies like Country Delight, we've got companies like Battery Smart, we've got companies like Rafi, which is into carbon credits. So there's quite a few of these kinds of companies which are doing interesting things in what you would define as impact, right? But I think the 2 reasons why I think impact is so mainstream already, and I think impact already is the biggest wealth making opportunity in the country, is because of the couple of experiences I've had. In my past life, I was a CMO of Jio. And we have sort of seen the story of how data went from 300 to 400 rupees per gigabyte, and only 50 million, that is 5 crore people in 2016, to 3 rupees per gigabyte. That's a factor of 100, and about 800 million people on the network at this point in time, which I think is a huge impact, thing. The second thing is, thanks to my Infosys stint, I've had the pleasure of working with Nandan and gang to try and create a digital public goods ecosystem. So, if you remember, Aadhaar's first and most successful implementation actually was Jio. So, that was one. Then we saw UPI come through. I got a bit on that. And now, after that, COVID, and things like what we are doing with ONDC right now. That also is a hugely powerful differentiator for us as a country, which I think is very much square in the middle of impact. And the combination of all of these forces make this opportunity the single biggest opportunity we have going for us as a nation, and the single biggest opportunity for Leapfrog. Because remember, in the global geopolitical landscape, we are now, sort of benefiting as a neutral country from the incestuous war between America and China and other countries. So I think we tend to sort of run away from here and make a much more powerful story. I think that's the opportunity that I'm looking at, and look forward to further conversations.
Great. So I think it's very important for us to first of all understand the genesis of what impact means to you all. So maybe Anshu, because you are at the intersection of non-profits and corporate, and non-profits define impact in a very different way, but I'm sure the kind of impact that you're talking about may be something different than lots of us thinking about it.
Thank you. So when I led Unlimited India, and we were selecting social entrepreneurs, and we would invite anybody with any interest in impact to be on our panels. And they would ask us, so how do you define impact? And it is always a tricky one, right? And my favorite question is Geo. I will ask the audience, how many of you believe Geo is an impact organization? You just heard the numbers. It created impact, 800 people using it. How many people think Geo is an impact organization? You do, right? But, and I would use that as my favorite example. No offense meant. But what was the starting point of Geo? Was it impact? Was it to take data to households? Or was it an unidentified market opportunity? So for us, impact was the intent to solve a problem, which is what all of you social enterprises which are part of the IRMA group would be doing. So that is the first one. Second one, at Unlimited, we went to the next stage, saying by definition, so Byju's is also solving a problem of education. But will your product be accessible to the poor? To the people who are the under 25,000 rupee income? Will your product by definition have a market segment which will ensure that that service, skill, income would be available? So for example, somebody was creating a cancer project. It was an internet information. Even if I get cancer, I can't get information in one place. It's an established fact. International, there are sites in India, you don't have information in one place. So there's a person who's going to create that pattern. But the way it was so high-tech that it was not going to be accessible to the poor. Right? It was all in English and whatever. And by design, that was like that. So then we were like, no, it is high impact. But we will not call it impact because it's got no leeway of provision even in phase 2 or 3 for it to be accessible to the under 25,000. So we define impact in that way, and there is no right or wrong, but that's how we define it.
It's about it. Obviously, only would define the equity investing. I know the pre and post. Only if I say people used to say agri is the last domain to invest, and you all kind of change the whole thesis of it. So what impact means to you, or like, or how you define it?
So when we started Omnivore back in 2010, 2011, this space did not exist. It was a twinkle in the sky. When you go and I tell people we're doing agri-tech investing, they're like, what is that? There were like innovations were few and far between. But the reason why we kept pushing, why we were like, steadfast on our goal was because it's a huge sector. It's a mythic sector even. India has been an agrarian economy forever. And these are not just people who are toiling away on the fields. These are voters. These are people who dictate the socio-cultural fabric of the country. These are people who decide who comes to power. And these are people who feed the country. It's a miracle of the 21st century that India, a country of 1.4 billion people, 1.4 or is it 1.6? 1.4 officially. 1.4 billion people, we are food secure. Now, that it has taken some time to get there, of course, and there are still areas where we need to do better. But I think in short, what defines impact for us, what defines impact investing for us is whatever we are investing in, whatever startups we are investing in, are they improving smallholder profitability? Are they improving smallholder resilience? Are they improving sustainable farming practices? And most importantly these days, are they climate proofing the agrarian economy of India? Are they making sure that Indian farmers can double their income in the coming years? Indian farmers can have a dignified, profitable life that they can be proud to say, yes, I'm a farmer, and not send their kids off to the urban areas to become Swiggy and Zepto runners. So yeah, that would be impact for us.
Yeah. So coming to Amrit, obviously Acumen defined the way the impact investing started out in this whole country. One of the first pioneers. Down the line, it's been a long time. We are talking on 17 years in this whole sector. What impact defines you, but not just impact, and what's the scale as well? If I take two things together for you.
So basically, impact for us, internally we define it's a three-dimensional way. We talk about scale, then we call it breadth also, and then we call it depth of the impact. So if there's an improvement in income of say 1 lakh farmers by an intervention, how much is the increase? So that is the depth. And then there's a third dimension to it, the duration of the impact, whether it is sustainable enough, if that increase is it's a one-time thing, or it is probably making the farmers or agriculture sustainable in the long term. So that is how we impact, and obviously we have focus, as mentioned, that it's farmers, obviously smaller farmers, and we were talking about 20,000 income, 90% in farmers, it's even lower. 86% of the farmers are below 10,000. So as per the data, so it's really so if the intervention is really having an impact on those people, then obviously it's an impact for us. Similarly, in the workforce space, we have gig workers and contract workers. If we are doing anything in terms of formalizing them, or so that is another way. And third, obviously it's true for farmers also in general, making these people more resilient, both in terms of income and also in terms of climate. So these are some of the focus for us, and scale for us is obviously it is some of the questions that we receive initially from startups, that at this point of time we can't show that scale, but if the model is investable, that is why we invest in investable innovative solutions, which probably with impact at the heart of it. It should be part of the business model. It's not, because most of the things it's one of the direct also, because every intervention has an impact. But whether that intervention is the center of the business model, the impact, that is something which is very important for us, and that is where it is important for the startups also in terms of storytelling, when we are probably reaching out to impact investors, whether we know about this, that what is the thesis of that fund, whether we need to build story around it, Because we know even some of our recent investments that we did, they were not good enough. They were doing a lot of impact, and we could say understand that, but they were not initially able to tell a story around it, to build a narrative that this is the kind of impact which is possible from this intervention. That is very important, I think, for all the startups in this space.
Rajiv, like you are a pioneer in finding unicorns like future, like and time and again you have been so successful, like in terms of identifying these guys, scaling up in a big way. So, what impact? What do you feel is something which you take as a metrics to define the choosing of the founders? At the same time, what is the next step of that impact as well?
Thanks. I think two big points here, I think, are so the zeitgeist of the times that we are living in. At this point in time, I think India has got a unique privilege of having top quality brains at dirt cheap prices. ये दोनों चीजें बहुत important है, right? समझ रहे हैं, right? You know, so effectively you go to the Western world, where I'm sure many of us have been there. The cost of living in a typical Western city today is about $30,000 to $40,000, right? You know, so you've got three founders trying to create a story, right? तो 100,000 तो उनकी एक साल की जिंदगी के लिए चाहिए, you know, खाना पीना खर्चा, बस 100K just to get, you know, just to think about the idea की startup करें, right? उसके बाद 40-50,000 लगाएगा, तब ट्रेनिंग, you know, स्टेशन से बाहर निकलेगी, right? India में that same kid sitting in a top college in the country can live at 1/10 of that, $2,000, $1,500 में हो सकता है, right? So what you can do with $10,000 in India, right? You need 20x or 15x of that to do anything in the Western world, right? So by definition, you've got a phenomenal advantage in this country in terms of what you can actually deliver from a startup perspective. That's the first thing that I think you have to remember. The second thing is basically you needed the second part of the equation to be fulfilled, which is basically कि जनता को technology समझ में आती है, right? You know, I remember when we were launching Jio कि हमें लगता था कि it's all the next gen that is going to be, you know, the kids and the grandkids that are going to be this internet generation and they are doing it. Today I'm telling you, it's not the next gen that's leading this internet phase. Yeah, it's that guy sitting in that Uber, you know, sort of saying मेरे को 24 घंटे data चाहिए, right? It is that family that is doing all this stuff. You know, उनकी जिंदगी इस पे आधारित है यार, you know, that is much more valuable than your kid or my kid sort of sitting down and doing some social media. You know, it's trivial compared to, you know, what, you know, life has changed for these people, right? So Janata is now completely digital in the country, right? You know, and this is something that, you know, I was again, you know, 2 weeks ago outside of India. And I got a train ticket in Germany, which is supposed to be this thing. Of course, all the trains were late there, which is very interesting by itself. But the train ticket was 5 pages long. यार हमें क्या चाहिए? You need कहाँ जा रही है? नंबर क्या? प्लेटफॉर्म नंबर क्या? तेरा सीट नंबर क्या? ये 4 आइटम चाहिए, right? और कुछ नहीं चाहिए ना, right? Why do you give me a 5-page document that I have to take a physical printout of and then go and sit in the seat? You know, that's the kind of environment those guys are still in. You know, when I look at that world and I look at my world, which I come from in India today, it's fundamentally different, right? You know, अभी हमें printout की जरूरत नहीं होती रेलवे स्टेशन में जाने के लिए, right? You know, that is I think the edge that we already have, right? Another example I have, America was going around printing checks to give to people during COVID, and half the people had gone off to their home because you know नौकरियां नहीं है, तो घर चले गए थे, check कहाँ गई, right? And here we are merely handing over data through you know direct benefit transfer, without worrying about whether you know the check has to go somewhere or not. These are things that are telling you that something is up in this nation which is very different. To me, it crystallizes to these 2 points. एक तो हमारे पास extremely high quality of brains है, जो बहुत सस्ते में अवेलेबल है, जो दुनिया ने आज तक इस्तेमाल किया. You know, look at the IT revolution. Look at the fact that 40% of all founders of all unicorns come from 2 colleges in the country. Like, you know, and all unicorns in the world, not just Indian unicorns. All unicorns in the planet come from the institutional framework that we have created at this point in time in the country, right? And the third thing is really about an audience that is also right and you know deliberate. And all of these are coming together in one perfect storm at this point in time in the country. That's I think the biggest thing. Impact हो रहा है, हर चीज बदल जाती है. अब ये 10 साल में you look at what happens to India, I think we are in for an amazing ride. I don't want to miss this roller coaster sitting anywhere else except in India. That's where I am.
Let me start with the room. So, just 100 families in this country have 30% of Indian GDP money. Okay, just 100 families. And we talk about great amount of success. We talk about great amount of revolution in terms of income, generation, and other things. If we remove that 100 family money, India is actually in the after 100 in terms of the per GDP income of people that we are talking about. So are we talking about success in terms of one dimension, or we are talking about a holistic thing? And remember, when we are talking about this whole discussion in this room, we are talking about that there should not be an anarchy. There should not be something where we get anger in a different way coming in. Like we are talking about Manipur, we are talking about Orissas of the world, we are talking about different places as well. There are lots of different things coming in. So coming into this, how you feel, Anshu, the importance of impact investing and social enterprise?
So can I just elaborate that not just to social enterprises, it's both NGOs and social enterprises. I know that's always the elephant in the room, but they play a really critical role because they are reaching to a place where nobody else goes, nobody cares, and is making that access. So people, in my Unlimited India journey, we've incubated more than 400 people, right? 400 entrepreneurs and organizations. So I think they play that critical role. While there is a state and there is a government machinery meant to service every individual, access because they're either not profitable or they're too remote to be touched. I mean, a person with disability has the lowest share of wallet in a household. Forget the government, right? Even when I look at a CSR donor, if I'm a severely child with severe IDDs, I've had a donor say, but why should I invest my money there versus somebody who's going to be a productive asset to the nation, right? So if you look talking about that kind of thinking, and all of us might think the same. Even in a family, I might think that I will train the child who can go get me income rather than spend money on a child who was visually disabled, right? So I think social enterprises by design, or NGOs or social entrepreneurs play a very critical role in servicing, identifying where the root problems exist, putting their soul and effort at a lot of cost to reach that last mile and deliver products, services which they need, which will lead to that dividend that you're talking of, Rajiv, right? Because if you leave that population out or continue to call them just the workforce, there will be the anarchy that you're talking of, Arjun. And so that role is really critical. But because, I'll flip this question quickly for a second to Rajiv. Rajiv, what are the top 3 things you will look for when you're making an investment in an organization? If you can just tell us that.
Yeah. So the team, that's the first one that you look for. What is the team, what is the idea, the TAM, the total addressable market, the market projection you have, and the kind of traction you're doing, which is essentially how they work. ख्याली पुलाव है या पुलाव आदि तक that sort of way.
Perfect, right? But when we are as social enterprises, what do we look as the TAM? TAM is the addressable market. हम उस village, district के beyond जा ही नहीं पाते because हमें लगता है पैसे कहाँ से आएंगे. Whereas when an entrepreneur in the commercial world thinks big, puts the total addressable market as the state and the TAM or SAM and so on, whatever. The TAM is not total addressable market, put it to the country or even the world as the total addressable market, right? So I think impact investing is important, but we as social entrepreneurs need to be ready for the investor and talk their language. So I don't think the problem is in the money. I'm sure, Rajiv, out of all your investments, there are a lot of ones which are impact investing, right? But it's because we don't know the language, the narrative, the story that Amrit was talking about. अगर हम वो बात करेंगे is when the investments will come. So I think we have to change our mindset. Stop thinking only social enterprises. Think enterprise making an impact and broaden our vision. Then we will get investment. So I think it's important.
So I'll just put down a small analogy to the audience here. So we've been supporting investing in a very small enterprise which is at the base camp of Siachen. And Siachen, just to kind of give a sense, is the longest glacier after polar regions. Like we are talking about Arctic and Antarctica. And just these are not just an enterprise, they are the custodian of that glacier. And just imagine that glacier disappears. Nobody cares, we don't care. But lots of rivers comes from there, they will disappear. And just 14 families left. Now, let's assume if you're talking about a for-profit, with profit or with purpose. And if suppose because of our intervention, if we are not doing, these 14 families leave and nobody is there as a guardian for that glacier, do we all sit here and discuss things, or we will discuss things in a different way? Subhamini.
So, are you talking about the glacier, or what is the question here?
I'm talking about glacier disappearing working families which are custodians, and if we are not supporting that enterprise, which is kind of supporting the livelihood of whatever the existence of that family is.
I will talk from the agri perspective. Correct. So, for the longest time in India, we have always focused on production badhao, or do have more production of milk, have more production of tomatoes. Why are we falling behind in our per acre yield? But then we did not have enough infrastructure to absorb that and actually make something out of it, which is why you had so many roads laid with tomatoes and potatoes from time to time. That was the issue. And the issue there was we put the profit, sans the human aspect of it on the top. That was more important than actually figuring out how the people are going to be, how they have to deal with it. Increase the production. What are they going to do with that production? How is it going to be absorbed in the entire value chain? So there's a paradigm shift that has happened, I think, over the last 5 years, I guess, where we have put the farmer in the center. So we have gone towards a more human-centered design. And that's where we have also seen our entrepreneurs who are working the value chain for the longest time. The money was concentrated towards the end in certain pockets. Farmers would only earn peanuts. So now that is changing. They are putting the farmer in the middle. They're putting information in their hands. They're making them more aware, empowering them with, okay, this is what you're producing. If you clean that up a little bit, you can probably get 10 rupees more or 2 rupees more. And that's a huge deal when you have tons of produce to move. So that becomes very important, where you actually look at not just the purpose, but also how you can make the person, how you can empower the person at the center of it, how you're working for the person, how you can make the person, self-sufficient. So that is really important. And I'm not really sure how the 25-15 families who are, looking after the glacier, because looking after a glacier is a completely different ballgame than looking after a piece of land. So that I will let you take that.
Things are easy, then it's not nice to have a panel here. So, Amrit, we have been supporting this one enterprise which is trying to support lots of farmers in terms of wastages of food and how to kind of get to the next level as well. So, if we talk about investment thesis, what defines the differentiating investment thesis? Is it just the profit, or it is a purpose as well in this whole case?
So basically, I talked about it briefly. So whether we look at any company, so our thesis is basically the impact has to be embedded in the business model. So if impact is not, and that's why we call ourselves impact first and not say any investment. So that's a difference from a typical VC investment. For instance, we evaluated a company some time back, and company was doing good, and it was in fact fitting to probably clicking most of our thesis checklist. But one thing that was not clear. For instance, it was doing regenerative agriculture, which is part of our thesis. It was probably doing cash crops, giving high realization to the farmer. That was also correct. But the difference was they were doing 15% of the business out of from the farmers, procuring from the farmers, and 85% they were doing from their own land. And they said we will obviously increase the proportion of the farmers. But what we realize, because our focus is smaller farmers, so it is not advisable for the company in the long run to work with smaller farmers. It is better them to work with larger farmers. So in that sense, that impact is not embedded in the business model. Today it was looking like it has an impact in increasing income. In fact, they were also employing some of the farmers in the say off-season days. So that is how we define a business model with an impact. And obviously, it has to be profitable, because that is what we think our investment is mostly catalytic for future investments, and also for, say, probably in future, if the company would be sustainable, to say it will be able to grow, and also it will be able to generate cash flow for the company, so that in the long run, probably we'll get our investment back and we can invest it again in some other companies, and also the company can increase So in that way, as the business grows, the impact will also grow. So that is the basis of our investment when we talk about our thesis.
Rajiv, obviously, you found lots of niche, and these companies have grown exponentially, unicorns and others. But there has been also been a paradigm shift where we are seeing like you are investing in future of business, like which is primarily battery smart companies or agri specific and other. So what shift it brought in, and does it at a confluence of social, or it is completely profit still?
Yeah, still profit के पीछे कोई नहीं भागा सकता. Even Mukesh Ambani, thank you, reference, because it's just not sustainable. Because what do you define as profit? Today, tomorrow, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 50 years from now. That's a question that you're gonna have yourself, right? So, I think the both to give up. Nobody can do anything without an impact. Viewpoint anyway. That's a belief that I think all of us have to have. And, any sophisticated civilization has that viewpoint. Right? Amir ban jate ho to sabse pehle impact ke bare mein sochte. Think about Bill Gates and what they do, right? So I think that's very clearly there. Right? So, but the way I want to sort of position this is to really talk about what the future is going to go. And if I want to bring in, I think Anshul made a very valid point. You can't ignore the marginalized in the process of the search for this. So you have to do both. If you just do the search and just keep it at a capitalist mindset, then the only thing you're going after is basically empowering the ones that are going to give you the biggest return, right? But that does not necessarily mean it's going to be fair. And I think fairness is a very integral part of the society that's getting advanced. And we are clearly there. We've got a 2,000-year history to prove this, right? So I think that's something that I think that's where technology plays. Right? And you said future, so I'm going to sort of link it back to this. So there are 3 or 4 big trends that are happening in the world today. I think one of those trends, I'm sure all of you are aware of, which is the AI thing. AI is again sort of, think about what this story is. Why is it so powerful? Why is it so sexy? Let me just take a minute to explain that. Right now, AI is a word that has been around for the last 40 years. Right? AI पहली बार नहीं सुना है. तो ऐसी क्या अफवाह फैल गई है, ऐसी क्या उधम मच गया कि suddenly AI has become everything in every. If you don't have an AI in your startup pitch, then nobody should say you anymore. ऐसी क्या? The answer is, technology is an enabler of productivity, civilization, improvement, has been something that everybody has acknowledged and recognized for a very long time, right? But for the last 40 years, we worked on getting humans to understand how to work with computers, right? मतलब कि कंप्यूटर की भाषा आदमी को आप समझाते थे ताकि आदमी जाके कंप्यूटर से बात करे और उनसे जो benefits निकाल सके वो कर सके. So that's why Indian IT scene is so big, right? We've got the largest number of programmers in the country because basically the model was teach humans how to speak computer. नई भाषा सिखाओ, right? That's essentially the word, right? For the first time in the history, we figured that this is a very inefficient process. Humans को सिखाया नहीं जा सकता, सारे गधे हैं. Right? So go the other way around now, right? So you are now teaching the computers how to understand humans. That's what this mod has been. That's what OpenAI did when they brought out this ChatGPT to the planet right now. कंप्यूटर को उन्होंने सिखा दिया कि आप ह्यूमन को समझो. कॉन्टेक्स्ट समझिए, कॉन्टेक्स्ट की बात बहुत होती है, तो कॉन्टेक्स्ट समझिए. Those kind of things I think is really what computers understand now, which would never happen. Right? Now that by itself is a paradigm shift, but what that means is something insane. That means that you, I, any of us, we don't need a translation layer for us to do what we want to do with the power of the machine behind us. There's no need for me to have the programmer coder who's going to translate Meri Bhasha into computer Bhasha and then retranslate that back and give it back to me in the language that I can do. The computer will do that by itself. Right? That means basically that anybody in this room, anybody outside, anybody in the world can actually directly engage with these machines, get what they want out as long as they've got a point of view of this. That is paradigm shift that has never been seen before. And that is going to determine what is going to happen in the future of humanity over the next, 10, 15 years, right? Now add to that 3 other trends that are happening, right? One is really this, computing wave that's happening, quantum level, the speed at which the processing power is rising. इसका तात्पर्य यही बनेगा कि आपको पूछने और सवाल के जवाब मिलने के लिए आपको कोई कॉस्ट नहीं लगेगी. जैसे पावर की, there used to be a time when power used to be at a huge premium in the country, right? Delhi particularly used to have all these power cuts in summer, and I remember coming here and बहुत मुश्किल हुआ करता था. That's one of the reasons why people used to go to Bombay, because there were no power cuts in Bombay, right? I'm sure you remember those days. आज तो most parts of the country have got power. Similarly, you're looking at a world where processing power will become very, very low cost because of all these innovations that are happening in that, which essentially accelerates the first wave that you had. Right? On top of that, fact, you've got all kinds of newer paradigms that are coming on. For instance, Web3 and this entire tokenization, I'm sure you're hearing about this, that decentralizes the entire world. You don't need to have trust-based ecosystem. Right? All of these again point to a perfect storm of actions that are happening together, which sort of changes the future of humanity as we look at it. Right? And by definition, the ones that you impact the most are also going to be the ones that are going to give you back the most as well. Right? It's just a question of time frame. आप आज लेंगे 5 साल के बाद लेंगे 10 साल के बाद लेंगे शायद you do it in such a way that you're able to get a little bit out of it at every stage. That's where your planning as a business person comes in, but impact is center of all of this. That's I think the sense I get.
So I'll open up the questions, but before that I'll just put some statistics here. So we have 108 unicorns in India, and we have huge amount of VC funding. We have lots of impact funding. In terms of statistics, if you ask me, there are just 5 or 6 ethnic groups which are the fund managers. There are 5 or 6 ethnic groups which are the recipient of that fund manager's money. That means we are talking about the portfolios of them. And that is, I'm talking about more than 90%. And there are just 6 states in India, and that too in 6 states, just 6 cities, if I put it like this. So are we talking about the startup phenomena as a small, concentrated form of money coming into few people? Or we are talking about a much larger vision? So with this, opening the questions for everybody to have. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Karan. I'm the founder and CEO of Superhuman Race. We are an AI company that measures good, so we measure impact in its various definitions. My question was around the definition of impact investing, and that's the reason why I'm here today. How watertight is the definition? Because when I heard each one of you talk, I saw that there are limitations that you've put, like access or sector, like agri and so on. But when we look at the most impactful work that happens, it usually goes beyond a vertical sector, right? So for example, on our platform, sustainable agriculture's soil sequestration potential over the years, farmer income, how does it compare against benchmarks, for education, for various different things, right? Gender, and also climate. So India has lost 90% of its biodiversity in the last 40 years, and that is a trend that's happening around the world. We're in the middle of the 6th mass extinction. So I'm just wondering, how watertight is the definition of impact investing? I did not hear a lot about climate being a relevant stakeholder for impact investing. So just wondering if that is true. We also set up intentionally as a for-profit company, and one of our taglines is doing good is good business. So wondering if that is something that also fits within the impact investing domain. And the third is that, so the third question that goes into this is, how limited are investors by sector? Because we operate across, it's an AI product, so the whole fact that it needs to pertain to is it cannot be limited. Imagine ChatGPT just answering questions from one website. It wouldn't be ChatGPT then, right? So we cater to 77 different industries, 40 thematic areas that all correspond to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, Global Reporting Framework. So that's sort of what my question is. How limited is the definition of impact investing, and is it due for an update, or is my understanding limited?
Anybody impact investing?
No, I don't think it's limited at all. And that's what I was trying to say even with Rajiv, right? If you create Farm Easy, which is going to get medicines on call, is that not impact? Right? I was ill and I couldn't get out. Today it can get delivered. So the definition of impact is very high. To me, Geo is the highest impact. Honestly, I mean, just it took mobile back to beyond, right? So I think people are investing in organizations solving a problem. That is all impact. I think when we are more on the lens of we take an extreme position as NGOs or as impact investors, saying, are you definitely looking at raising impact investing? Then you want to talk the walk of what people want to hear. But willy-nilly, every venture capitalist in the world is investing in impact because you are solving a problem faced by one or many. Otherwise, a business will not exist. Right? So I don't know if I've answered your question, but I just think we take a very narrow view because we are trying to make a point. Impact investing didn't take long. When Omnivore invested in an agri company working with small and marginal farmers, your return gestation, so maybe if I could flip this, impact investing is when the return gestation is longer. Commercial is when the impact return gestation is smaller because it's more. Is that fair? Like, the returns are maybe in 5 years. There is impact investing, the returns might come in 9 years. That's the only way I would say give us a longer runway for giving you the same return. But otherwise, it's just different lenses of seeing the world. Avishkar is one of the largest impact investors in the country, is what it's defined as. But Vineet Rai, who is the founder, will come on any stage and tell you, but we're not an impact investor. We're asking the same returns. Why are you calling us impact investors? We're just investing in agri, in poultry, in dairy, and in products which are impacting the poor. But that's not by design, right? So, no easy answer, at least I don't have one. Anuj, you yourself are an investor in helping.
So, I've been in this sector from the beginning, and we actually use system to our advantage. So we use definitions which are actually flawed, but we raise money based on that. So I'll take a very simple example of gender lens investing, women investing. So the thesis, if you go into their reports, is super cool. The cool one I say they hack the system, investors. They say 51% owned by women or 33% led by women, like leadership, or 30% women ratio or indirect beneficiary which are women. Now tell me how a woman will get investment. So that's the way we have the system. So while we are talking about impact investing, it's a way of raising money. But if we are not, and absolutely right on your side, like if we are not making it watertight, it's subjective to abuses or like misuses, and it is happening.
Let me add थोड़ा negative हो गया ये थोड़ा positive add कर देता हूँ. Right, so you're absolutely right. The fact of the matter is there are two components to this impact story. One part is really that you've got now a significant proportion of the world capital that is very much being defined by the need to have impact on their portfolio, right? Whether you talk the DFIs, whether you talk the national funds, you've got a lot of these funds that are now saying that, so it's a good way for you to sort of, position yourself that you're able to, get that money into your pool, right? So that's clearly something that's happening. And I mean, obviously it is to be expected. But the other side of the story is also very true that, the only way you can make money, see, all logical arguments, if you're in a market, the easy ways to make money, which is making money out of rich people by charging them big monies, are already ignored. Right? By definition, if you're in a disruptive field, what you're doing, for instance, by definition is a difficult way to make money. अगर आसान होता तो रियल एस्टेट की पोर्टफोलियो खड़ा कर लेते या आयरन स्टील की बिजनेस खड़ा कर लेते. You understand what I mean? ऐसे धंधे तो बहुत होते हैं, आप इसलिए कर रहे हो क्योंकि आपको ये नई रास्ते से. By definition, it means that you're targeting new set of customers who are not in your core frame and you're doing this. So I think that part clearly is impact, right? He mentioned Farm Easy, we mentioned both of the Farm Easy, we were the seed investors in Farm Easy. Country Delight is one of ours. We share a portfolio with Varaha, by the way. Right? So there is quite a few of these companies that are sort of doing fabulously well, let's say, which I think are, one part of that. But the other side is also equally true. What do you do about those underprivileged who cannot make it into today's system? If you ignore them and move on, society will never forgive you, you will never forgive yourself. I think beyond the metrics of measurement that the market would recognize, there is this need for us to be seen as civilized, decent, whatever, whether you call it societal eyes mein, hum achhe log dikhne chahiye, right? And let's not underestimate the value of that, because that's what determines organizational culture. That's what determines how you treat somebody else inside the company. That's what determines how you treat a customer. That's what determines how you treat a contract. And those are things where we are broken in India, right? Contract की कोई value नहीं होती, लिखा पढ़ी की बहुत ज़्यादा value नहीं होती. You know what I'm talking about. Those are the spaces where I think that genuine impact की जो viewpoint होती है, जहाँ पे fairness की जो value होनी चाहिए, that's where I think that part needs to come. But these two can coexist. It's not like you're going to go through this. See, at the end of the day, let's not forget, and I'm the optimist. All of us are optimists by definition. नहीं तो venture capital में होते ही, So the fact of the matter is, this is a nation that has pulled almost 300 million people into the middle class in the last 6-7 years. Right? 300 million people. Right? The only country that did this before us was China, and they are whatever they are doing is different. Right? But the fact that we've done it, and we've done it without sort of using the term impact. Right? In fact, I was, a couple of weeks ago elsewhere, And some of these DFOs were telling me, actually, the need for India to get DFI money is actually coming down because, the impact is much higher in places like, Sri Lanka and Pakistan and Bangladesh and other countries that we are surrounded by. It might sound like पैसा नहीं आएगा, but to my mind it sounds like music because basically वो acknowledge कर रहे हैं कि यार हमें बाहर के पैसे की जरूरत नहीं है, अपना पैसा ही ज़्यादा आ रहा है. And that is true in your ecosystem as well. Every single fund in the country today has, our fourth fund is about 4 times the size of the previous 3 funds put together. So essentially, put the fourth fund in size, which is essentially all of the funds that I've done, we have raised in the last 9 years. Right? That sort of tells you that it's not just us, right? Every fund is doing this. Fact is, there's a lot more money that's available in the country, and we're able to create that story. To my mind, I think that's the impact, that's the achievement that we're able to get, and that's a positive cycle that continues to go. So I will leave that with the optimist point of view.
So my question might sound a bit stupid, but I wanted to ask from all of your perspective, when do you see a time when we have the most expensive of brains and we are still able to sustain that? Like, do you see such a time or not?
Yeah, that's a date when actually there's a problem with that statement. I'll tell you what. One of the big problems that we're facing in society, and that's a contradiction that has not been resolved, is the cost of the brain is going to come down anyway because of AI. देखिए आज क्या प्रॉब्लम है? प्रॉब्लम ये है कि बेसिकली आपको ह्यूमन की इसलिए जरूरत है क्योंकि कंप्यूटर्स जो ह्यूमन कर सकते हैं वो कंप्यूटर नहीं कर सकते. वो that border has not been crossed over yet. Right? But that border is very close right now. There are barbarians at the gate, if I was to use, and these barbarians are the machine. Go back to all the Terminator movies that you've watched and all that stuff. It's sort of something that's coming. So the fact of the matter is, if I see the cost of the human brain, I don't see it this way. I only see it this way right now. वो कहाँ पे the cost will sort of offset and the machine becomes cheaper than the human. That's another paradigm that we'll have to go through. And then what happens to humanity itself and how you define that becomes a different story. Those are the kinds of questions that we'll go through. मगर आपका सवाल का I don't know whether that pathway actually the probability function of that pathway is very low at this point in time. That is the way I would sort of answer that question.
I think one question. It's a question for everyone here. We have a lot of social enterprises here. What would you look at when you would invest in them? So, what would you look at when you would want to invest in them? That is.
So, I think one of the great privilege of investing in agriculture and agri-tech space is we kind of ask them, do you answer these 3 questions that farmers generally end up asking? First and most important, is this augmenting my income? If it's not augmenting my income, I don't care about convenience. I have all the time in the world. I don't want convenience, I want income. Second, is it affordable? And third is it easy to use? These are the 3 basic questions that farmers will ask you, that anybody who is in rural India would ask you these 3 questions, because they're not looking for convenience, they're looking for better income and they're looking for affordable solutions. Like even when soil health card came up, they were like, what are we going to do with this? Like they are suggesting all these things are not even available in the market. So those are the they don't want advice, they want sustainable sources, extra sources of income. So that is the lens that we kind of look at from the agri perspective.
Yeah, in general, I think I agree it must be clear now. So we have sort of similar lens for agri. But in general, what we look for obviously is the solution has to be investable. With investable, I mean whether there is enough growth in that business, and in the long term, whether the business would be able to generate cash to sustain itself. Because we, as I mentioned earlier, we want a capital to be catalytic, and we don't want to, because otherwise it's philanthropy, right? If we are just giving funds and then they are used by the businesses. So when we are investing in an enterprise, the long-term view is that the enterprise will be able to sustain itself. So, and obviously, the third most important is impact. So the solution has to be, it has to be linked to impact, and the impact has to be probably intrinsic to the business model. So that is something that we look at. And another important thing, which I think everyone of us would agree, is we look at the commitment of the founders to the impact. Because that is something, because at this level, I know in future there would be a lot of pivots that the company would do. They would refine their businesses. And that's why we have a very strong ecosystem today in India, in the impact space, where, say, there are these, there are accelerators, programs which help startups to refine their business model to reach a level where probably they can become investable, as we call it. So that's what we normally look at.
So maybe from our side, we are very niche players. We do something on place-based investing. That means we only invest in local communities. And it seems very small and a radical idea. But what we felt is, if I am in Uttarakhand, why should I support somebody from Bangalore? So we are only investing in Garhwali or Kumaon. If I go to Kashmir, I'm only investing in Kashmir. So we, even though we are so-called too small, but we were able to galvanize first ever investment in 8 states of India. Talking Kashmir, we are talking Ladakh, Uttarakhand, Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, Sikkim, and many others as well. Now, a few people will say they are too small, but just imagine removing Himalayas and then see the existence of India. So that's what we are.
I think that was the last word.
So 3 things I think impact investors will look at. And this is the problem that social entrepreneurs especially face. And I would urge each one of you, and Unlimited India is investing a lot of time and effort in asking you this question, is does the problem really exist? Is there a purchaser who has validated, and what's the persona of that purchaser? A lot of us are trying to solve a problem which we felt, we encountered, and we believed in. But does that problem really exist at a larger scale? So I would say investors would look at what is your problem, does it really exist, and what is the total addressable market that you understand. Because हमारा सोच इतना small होता है तो फिर investor को लगता है इसमें future कहाँ है. So, does the problem exist? What's the total addressable market? And what is the unique value proposition you are bringing to the solution? Is your solution run of the mill? Is it going to be deeply competitive? Sure. But what is your unique value proposition, which is why I will buy your product versus somebody else? And the team. How committed are you? How long will you stay with us? So I think these are definitively things which an investor should look at or looks at. Yes.
I think both of you have inspired me to say something. So, look, I mean, there are all kinds of businesses that can survive and thrive. And your point about being hyper-local, I think, is a great point there. Every idea is not a venture capital idea. Right? So, by definition, when we look at venture capital businesses, these are businesses in which you invest very little money for the capital that you get. And your expectation is 50x in the next 5 years, 100x in the next 5 years. Right? ऐसी businesses बहुत कम होती हैं, ऐसे माहौल बहुत कम होती हैं. In fact, the number of such opportunities are hand countable. In fact, a typical venture capital profile will have 50% of the companies that will give nothing back. Right? That's the model that we work on. In fact, if somebody says you've got a 40% default rate, I would say, if I don't have that, then I'm not taking enough risk on your behalf as an investor. So I think that's something that you have to remember. That said, though, there are lots of businesses that can be sustained without venture capital money, which is very, its expectation is very high because the default rate is very high. Right? You got debt, you got bank loans, you got investor money, you got asset-led, ecosystems. And India is a nation now where capital is just exploded. Right? Let me just explain this a little bit so you guys get the picture. See, since 2016, after Notebandi, we had GST. After GST, we had COVID. And after COVID, we had, let me call it Ukraine war. All of these have done something very interesting to the nation. It formalized the economy. मतलब कि जो पैसा लोग बोरी बिस्तर में रखते थे, वो पैसा बैंक में आ गया. And that's what happened. All of these things, I won't get into the details of how they happened. But think about what happens when $1 billion finds itself in a bank. The only thing the bank can do with it is to lend it. क्योंकि बैंक का पूरा business model इसी पे आधारित है कि उसको lend करें. क्योंकि उसका margin बनता है. वो आपको 4% देते हैं और लेंडर से 9% देते हैं और उसका जो 5% डेल्टा होता है उससे पैसे बनाते हैं. बैंकिंग का बिजनेस मॉडल इतना ही है, right? So the moment $1 billion comes in, the bank lends. Now when the bank lends, let's say the bank lends to me, that billion, I don't want $1 billion loan, but let's say it lends to me, it's not coming to me, it's coming to my bank. So this bank now has got $1 billion, it doesn't know what to do with it, it has to lend again, right? So ये क्या हो जाती है? There is something called velocity of money which is set up in this economic landscape, which once the formalization of the money starts to happen, you get something between 10 to 15 multiplier on every $1 billion that is coming into the formal sector. Right? So which essentially means for every 100 billion, 1,000, there was a reason why our GST collections have been in an all-time high, because the entire sector has turned formal, and more formal the sector gets, the more credit grows. There's an explosion of credit that happens, right? That's the first thing, right? Now, when credit explodes, what happens? Until now, you had the privileged classes that had access to this credit, right? So to all of us in this room, a 50,000 additional money coming into our kitty is not going to change our lives dramatically. Maybe it will get us a treat in the night, and tomorrow morning we're back to, because it's another number in the bank balance, right? But to that guy that, we are talking about, that omnivore addresses, 5,000 rupee difference will make a lifestyle change. It will mean a bigger TV, it will mean a, 3-wheeler and a 4-wheeler instead of a 2-wheeler, it will mean better tuition, teachers, it will mean all kinds of things. Each one of these things is consumption. इसका तात्पर्य ये है कि your consumption will just explode as an economy now, right? So I think to my mind, these two things, change the entire paradigm for you in terms of what happens. And there are all kinds of sources of money and all kinds of destinations of money. So I won't be too bothered about you needing to have only venture capital money, right? Please think about this as founders. सिर्फ venture capital game ही नहीं है, बहुत सी games हैं, और वो सारे के सारे games बढ़ती जाएंगी इंडिया में अगले 2-3 साल में, 10 साल की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, right? And that's already started. That is the, I think, the point that I want to make on the back of what you said.
So, livelihood alternatives, which is itself a social enterprise, I would say, and an ex-IRS officer.
So these are products of our startup.
I would also invite please give a big round of applause for all of them. They're really present with great insights on how impact and
when we were looking at the 3 pillars that we put together for this conference, as well as for social creators and for majority in general, I think these 3 pillars, I've said it enough times throughout the day. We talk about scale, profit and purpose, and in some sense, Karthik's organization, Jumbo Tail, and his personal thought process echoes them completely. The fact that he's been able to, in a span of 7 or 8 years, grow the organization to a 2,200 plus crore top line, and at the same time benefit a marginalized section of the society. I mean, it stands to reason that we really wanted to hear from you. Thanks so much for coming over.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I am very, very happy that we are able to bring together very purposeful entrepreneurs. And I think that the 3 pillars you mentioned is very, very relevant. And if not, then the whole story will not be completed.
Thank you so much. So, Umang just briefly touched upon your background, but could you give us a bit more of your background and then how that led to Jumbo Tail and what you do today?
Sure. So, like most of young students in the country, I actually went to engineering, but very soon, within 6 months, I actually dropped out and joined the National Defence Academy. I joined the Indian Army. I graduated after 4 years of training, 3 years at NDA and 1 year at IRMA. And I joined the infantry, Gorkhas. For 10 years I served. I took premature retirement in the rank of major, but in those 10 years, 6 out of my 10 years, I actually spent in combat zones. All the hotbeds of action that you're hearing in the news, Manipur, that was my first posting, then I was in Siachen Glacier, and then my last posting for nearly 2.5 years plus was in Uri. I inducted, I'm an infantry officer. Throughout the journey, and then I was also one of the youngest military observers from India to United Nations mission in Ethiopia and Eritrea. I've seen some parts of Africa. Throughout, my life started with a service mindset, right? So, there cannot be any argument on the fact that you're giving your life, and absolutely money is not a criteria. 8,000 rupees was my monthly starting salary, and I was a very good student. I got admission to engineering college, very, very good engineering college in Tamil Nadu. But very quickly I realized that, war and conflict are very, very nice ways to serve the nation. But even better way is that if, one unit of your work can impact a very wide population and improve the economic prosperity of the nation, then, why would anybody dare attack us? Right? Why would we even go into conflict, and why would we be there in that situation at all? And that's the world that I wanted our country to wake up. A powerful, economically stable and inclusive growth nation where we are all waking up with the peace that is guaranteed with armed forces, but we are all working very, very hard in exponentially multiplying our economic prosperity. And my journey towards what eventually became Jumbo Tail in 2015 actually started in 2008. I started, like most of us in the room, connecting farmers to end markets, coconut farmers via those days Nokia N70 was the smartest phone, to an SMS based system to traders in Delhi. It is 2008, remember Flipkart, I hadn't heard of this company. And we are very early days of technology, still able to connect the two sides through an SMS shortcode based system and make a transaction happen online. But shipping the goods was difficult, not impossible. You could find a lorry and then send, but money movement, right? The farmer wanted the money at the farm gate, the buyer wanted to pay at the end of the second delivery, they wanted credit, and even when they would pay in cash. So, and core banking as a concept itself was, I don't know how many of you even heard this concept called core banking. This today, all banks are linked. We can go to any ATM and withdraw, but that was not the case in 2006, 2008, where you cannot even withdraw your own money from some other ATM, right? So that was the very early days. And I quickly came to the conclusion that very counterintuitive to most of us, right? And at that time I was just contemplating, just about 6 months before getting out of the armed forces, I was contemplating what is the next step, right? And I saw many people, many of our social entrepreneurs, and the term is actually being less in use today. Those days, social entrepreneurship was a very big term that people used to use. And I saw that many of them are emotionally attached to a problem statement. They were not economically attached to a problem statement. They were not able to think from economic point of view. And I did not want to do that, because for me, remember, the goal of getting back or getting outside from the armed forces is to create an impact so wide that India is becoming economically prosperous. So for me, the goal was not to attend conferences or just tell a story, get featured in a paper, notebook, or just put a check mark in my life. That wasn't my goal. And therefore, it was very clear to me and evident to me that you cannot create an impact in this environment of infrastructure. And number two, I also quickly concluded that the commission agents or whosoever is there, RT and all of those people, right? Everybody said that they are actually taking value out of the system. I felt that they are actually adding a lot of value because they knew where the demand was, right? Because they are the only people who could actually give information on who the buyer is and give the trust to the next buyer and also arrange for credit. They were adding a lot of value. So they were not like really taking value out of the system. They are there, and because the market did not know where the end demand was, all these intermediaries, started, adding, being present there. So in my view, if at all you have to remove and create value, you need to actually create the demand first. So I realized that I need to get into a mindset of securing the demand rather than starting from supply side, which is what most people were doing. And then I applied to business school. I continued my journey in learning about marketplaces. I worked in eBay. Then eventually I came to Flipkart. I was director of products there. And then I started Jumbo Tail along with my Stanford classmate Ashish Jina. And he is a farmer himself. He's an apple farmer. He spent 15 plus months building his own vertically integrated apple farming and supply chain. And overall, I think at the end of the day, he also came to similar conclusions that I did, and we joined together to start Jumbo Tail.
Thanks so much. I'm going to take a little bit of a controversial question. Ram in the previous panel just mentioned that he read, was that in the book, Ram? You said the purpose of business is not of social business is not profit maximization. So your thoughts on that topic?
I'm fairly on the opposite camp. I think any economic value can only be created by shareholder wealth maximization. This is a famous, actually in business school, this is the first entire month we spend a lot of time actually debating about this. Is it about social good? Is it about shareholder wealth maximization? I think in the short term, things appear conflicting. But in the very long term, if this doesn't happen, there is no perpetuity to your cause. And even governments will not be able to fund. Governments get into debt. If it were like governments crash, right? Why do inflation happen? Why countries like Sri Lanka face a lot of problems recently? It's all because the entire demand, supply, production, and what you call as current trade deficit and current account deficit. All of those things come eventually into play. Everybody needs to have an economic model. If you don't have an economic model that is self-sustaining, you are not going to be able to create any impact. Right? You're not going to be able to attract the kind of capital that you want. You cannot start from emotional. Nobody is going to fund your emotions. I will be very, very vocal here. Right? It is probably very unpopular opinion. People, you can walk out of this spending your entire day feeling good about yourself, but you are not going to attract your investor. You are not going to attract your future talent. How are you going to attract your future talent? You are very good. You are a really purposeful person, but your engineering head or your sales head may not be. Now, if you tie the success of your organization to everybody in your organization being as purposeful as you are, good luck. This is the Indian society, for that matter, any world society doesn't have such kind of talent. People have different goals. People have to feed their families. People have to grow up in their life, and there is a reason why there is money. And if you do not want to accept this fact, I think you should not enter entrepreneurship at all. Or you will be a lifestyle player. You could impact like 1,000 people, 100 people, and you will probably be under Forbes, some 40 under 40 and 50 under 50 and all of those places. But if you really want to impact millions of people, you need to absolutely have an economic outcome. If you do not have economic outcome, capital will not join, talent will not join, and there is no way that you are going to be able to create the impact that you intended to create.
Thanks so much for that. We did hear that from a person who's done it.
No, but I will also tell you about my other side of the story, right? 10 years in the armed forces, we get a lot of funds. Like when we are deployed in combat zones, we get a lot of funds to actually deploy in those zones for local development. So we work closely with local development authorities. At least in Kashmir, there is a program called Sadbhavana, winning the hearts and minds of people. So Army helps build schools, Army helps build dams, Army helps build so many local infrastructure. I have seen that when you give something for free, there is no value. And second thing is, you will find many social projects, right? It will come and then maintenance के लिए पैसा नहीं रहेगा. वो डैम तो आ जाएगा, फिर उसकी इलेक्ट्रिसिटी वहाँ पे पिलर लग जाएगा, ट्रांसफार्मर लग जाएगा, उसका एक भी स्पेयर पार्ट के लिए पैसा नहीं. So then what happens? So then everybody puts the check mark, then the price is for opening ceremonies. That is not the future of this country. I would much rather have 1/10 of the entrepreneurs today. I agree and I appreciate the purpose. I agree, but I also recognize that not all of us have the innate talent to tell stories, raise funds, or see it through. But those 1/10 of the people are the ones who are going to eventually create large scale.
So, I mean, Conclave has famously said two things that don't scale, especially in the early days. What did you all do differently in the early days of Jumbo Tier that has helped you, according to you, to reach the scale that you've reached today?
So the first things first, right? So from Jumbo Tier's perspective, we were, I don't know how many of you people know, let me give a very brief introduction. So we are a B2B marketplace. We connect Kirana stores to suppliers and brands and outsourcing organizations. She mentioned about 3,000 crores or 2,200 crores of sales. All of that comes from a wide variety of food products. 40% of that comes from FMCG goods, including packaged food, but 60% of them comes from staples, rice, dal, flour, and everything. And then we have one of the largest SME logistics infrastructure, because we have a Kirana stores place order, next day we have to deliver the goods to the stores. And then we have a fintech platform that enables working capital loans for these stores. And we specifically target small and medium stores. So they do not have much support in the ecosystem. They are very small people. They don't get credit and they don't buy in large quantities. They need very, very small deliveries. They are located very close to the neighborhoods. So that is what we intend we do. One part of our business is about identifying entrepreneurs from day one and incubating them for opening new stores. So they have to open a lot of they require a lot of skill to identify the location, get trained. So we do psychometric tests, and the branded stores are called J24 stores. So these are branded convenience stores. Those stores are open in the neighborhoods, and we give full support for them, including branding and consumer walk-ins to those stores. So the entrepreneur gets like a entirely full support of supply plus demand generation. So this is what we do. But if you look at abstracted sense, right, we have placed a bet on the Kirana store community. In 2015, when we started, we are the first ones to actually place a bet on this community. We did not have any residents before, and people were directly funding, B2C kind of models. We said that grocery is an extremely large market, and taking the products and delivering via delivery to home using a person visiting for small value goods is not going to be economically sustainable. So you have to get to the you have to get to these stores, and the first question that then came is these people are not having the mobile phones. What do you do? The simplest answer was that the whole world uses Salesforce. And in order to take orders, then what is the tech leverage you are actually bringing to the ecosystem, right? So we first made our app in such a small footprint, like 4 MB, and those days 2G and we didn't even have 3G at that time. Yeah. And apps have to download, and people who sometimes they run out of packs and they have to call us, please phone pay order play low, and then you do. We did not do that. We then created a small system where people call us to recharge, and we would recharge the phone rather taking the order on the phone. We tell them that aapka recharge ho gaya, 100 rupees ka dal diya. Then you go and you place the order. Then when we come and deliver the goods to you, then we collect the 100 rupees from you. So then we became a primary recharge mechanism for these retailers. So when people run out of this thing, they'll say, please, they'll call us for recharge. Some of the aspects of our building businesses, right? You have to go daily to these stores. So not actually. If you don't deliver them daily, there's no value proposition. If you are going once in 7 days, then your distributor is doing the job. So every day we used to go, we deliver, and over a period of time, the density improved, and we eventually became profitable. So the things that I believe are, if you're very clear about your value proposition to the first of all, you have to be very clear about your target audience. Right? We didn't choose any kind of large traders and all. We said small and medium retailers are our target audience. They will order only by app, and we will deliver to them every day. Now, how did it improve their life? So today, a store is being replenished every 7 to 10 days when a distributor salesman receives. In our world, they could just place order and get delivery tomorrow, as little as they want. There is no push. We found that a Kirana store had inventory of 6 to 7 lakhs in the store, of which 3 to 4 lakhs he didn't want that inventory. He was pushed by brands. The salespeople will come and say, "Raklo, baad mein de dena," and all of those things. Right? He was perpetually, indebted to somebody because he had already taken the inventory. Inventory has actually not got sold. It is still out lying there. There is constant. In our world, he doesn't need to invest that kind of money. If he is willing to sell only 5 units, he will buy 5 units. He will get delivered. There is no push. It was a pull-based system. And number two, like we did not have to, invest it. So therefore, that reduced the amount of working capital that required for running the store. And second is because he could run as little as possible, he wasn't getting exposed to price, right? So that also improved the income. And the third and more important thing that we found was he really cared about the availability in the shelf. So if he doesn't have, like say, Maggi in his shelf, he's going to lose the entire top line. So when we are available, as soon as the Maggi runs out of stock, he doesn't have to wait for his distributor to visit in 7 days from now. He can actually replace it and replenish it like tomorrow. So that also increased his sale and that also increased his income. Right? So overall, some of these initiatives and some of the things that we did, and we built those supply chains, we built that credit system. None of them were initially easy, but over a period of time, it has become our fundamental competitive advantage and a defensible moat.
No, I mean, that's really great to hear. I mean, 2015, 16, the time frame that you're talking about, in case anybody remembers, is the pre-Jio era. I was in Airtel at that time in 2016, on the time when the Jio announcement came. At that time, even as employees, we used to get 10 GB a month. So for a local kirana wala to have data would have been unheard of. But the fact that you didn't choose to take that phone call, I think was a very bold and different move. I've never heard of something like that, and I think that's...
At all points in time, we had this carrot in front of us for short-term growth. I will tell you, the conventional wisdom is always Salesforce. And I will tell you that if you want to create large-scale impact, you have to break out of conventional wisdom. This is one of those conventional wisdoms that we broke out of, that we consciously chose that we will be a tech and tech-only ordering platform. We will not use Salesforce. Because by doing so, we were able to create that economic marginal, I would say, surplus of not having that cost, which we could invest in supply chains. That allowed us to do daily deliveries in an economically profitable way. And both of this don't go in hand if you actually look at it, because that is what, and that revalue will take some time, and that is why you need capital for. That is what you need to go and convince your people, convince your investors. It was not easy for us. It was not easy for us. Probably, people will think outside that you're all raised, but I will tell you that it is not easy for anybody. Maybe a very few people in the ecosystem may make it easy, but every dollar that comes after huge scrutiny. I'm very sure, even your fund will do all of that stuff, even if it is for a, $10,000 investment, right?
Yeah, about 50,000, but yeah, yes. And so will Ruchira. Ruchira was coming up next, who heads South Asia for IFC. I think that's what she will also tell you. Even if they're doing a $50+ million check, they will have, it's literally someone's hard-earned money that's coming to support your idea, your dream, because they believe in the dream. You should, at that point of time, have a sense of why you deserve that, because there are 50,000 other options out there for the investor to put their money, for sure.
On this point, right, let me tell one fundamental thing I learned, very important, right? We think that our competitors are our sector. Like say, I would like to think, and that's what one of the investors told me. Your actual competitor is not even B2B. Your actual competitor is gaming. Your actual competitor is news sites, because money is fungible, and an investor ultimately is looking for, some people are the sector focused and thesis focused people, right? Some people will say only impact, some people, but most of the investors have a return that they are expecting, and then they will go with the current flow. It could be the fintech, sometimes it could be gaming, like edtech was. If you look at the sector, I've been facing challenges from an investor that you will come from a meeting of gaming or fashion e-commerce with huge gross margins, and then you come and talk to me in Velocity, and then you will not be able to relate the two outcomes at all. And then fintech, edtech came, then fintech came, and then today it is B2B. Now, I had to wait for like 8 years to get my sector in limelight, right? Therefore, it's not easy. It's not easy for anybody.
Sorry, I think I've been hogging all the questions and everybody's been giving me dirty looks. If you want the mic to ask a question, please feel free.
Sure, you can ask it.
No, so I hypothetically, so let's take a hypothetical startup which has started out wanting to be a social enterprise. Let's say they want to improve the incomes of farmers, and they've come upon a product that the farmer can also grow over and above their regular product. But they want to pay the farmer a certain amount of money. The market is not willing to bear the same amount. Let's say that they want the farmer to also grow product X. They are willing to buy that from the farmer at 300 rupees a kg. But they have a competitor who is selling it retail at 300 rupees a kg. What would you say to this startup farmer?
You're forcing me to give hard answers that most of the founders sitting here. Yeah, I know. So I had a similar situation. I think that the first starting point. So let me peel the layers one by one. Right? You should not start off with the stack social enterprise. It's an enterprise, and you have to come to terms with this reality. Because when you come to terms with this reality, you remove the inherent expectation of sympathy and empathy. There are no sympathies and empathies required in this market. I am telling you that a lot of people in this world will be nice to you, but you can't get $1 from them. Learn to differentiate this. Right? I am all for support. I am all for good words. I am all for making people feel nice and everything. Right? But I am telling you that if you want to create impact at scale, you must realize what the market is willing to pay. That's the final price. So if your competitor is selling, or if there is a consumer demand at 300 rupees per kg, and your farmer is producing a cost structure that is only you can retail at 330 rupees per kg, there is going to be more demand, or there is going to be some demand from people who really care about what you do, maybe socially connected and all of those things, but it is not going to be large scale. So you cannot start from supply side and say, hey, look, I am doing some great work and these people really deserve something. So I would say that change the game. Even if you go back to the classics like Wealth of Nations and read what Adam Smith has written in his very, very first chapter of Division of Labor, right? He talks about farming itself is not a differentiator. He compares countries like say England and Poland and France and corn, how it is being produced. His fundamental premise, even in 1800s, where that the manufacturing that is happening is likely the one that will have ability for changing the thing. So therefore, a better outcome for this kind of a situation is value addition. Right? Today, if you look at the amount of kilometers that raw produce travels for the first value addition, it will be a lot of kilometers. Right? If you can shorten that distance, if you can actually reskill, today and GDP of India is 17% of GDP I think is coming from farming, but close to 52% of the population is working in farming. How are you going to support if you are not going to invest in value addition? That is why initiatives like food processing, manufacturing. So when you think about a farmer, solution, the economic outcomes may not come from higher productive farming. The economic outcome can be coming from processing, value addition that is meaningful to end consumer. It is not like chemical free and all of those things. Yes, there are a lot of value there, but we see in the market like consumers are not very, very clear how to identify the differences between a chemical free, organic. They don't know, and then they are saying, give me the best quality at the cheapest price in the fastest and the most convenient manner, preferably delivered to my kitchen. How are you going to make this economics work? So my answer is not like have a business plan that can interest, but that can explain how you're going to do. My answer will be here that if you can find a solution where production and processing can happen closer, I think this is one viable method. Second is reskilling. Like today, I'll tell you that many of the entrepreneurs that we are doing for our J24 stores have never done Kirana stores before. We start from very, very basic. What are the fundamental skills required for running a retail store? Right? Basic mathematics. great amount of showmanship, because ultimately you have to maintain customer relationships. So we select entrepreneurs with these kind of qualities, and then we help them get access to a store, and we help them get trained, we help them get reskilled. So maybe some part of your plan should also include reskilling of marginal farmers to be employed in those manufacturing facilities. So then you need to become a more commercial mindset.
Thanks so much. Any questions from the audience?
So sir, my question is around the optimism while starting up. So while we know that the costs are off, and we also have a path to when the cost would be normalized and the cost would make sense in the market. So there is a delta. That delta typically lasts between 1 year to 3 years. And again, I am using just a founding year. And during this phase, we've seen that multiple startup founders have ended up earning a lot. Only very few making the cut of reaching the profitability. So what's your take? Like, when we start, there is obviously a part of profitability and financial sustainability on exit, but that is dependent on a lot of variables, right? So a lot of people adopt the method of either discounting the price or selling to a premium niche customer segment that you just now mentioned. That obviously there will be a certain group of segment that will be willing to pay a premium because they like what you do, but that will only last for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. That is the maximum TAM of that sort of market. And during this, what in your experience would be a better approach to navigate this 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year of planning, discounting, raising funds, the market scenario, how the investors are correcting their investment right now in this, what we are calling as VC winter. So what's your take on what's happening in the ecosystem, and how the founders should probably rethink this financial engineering pressure for this? But what would be your take on this?
It's an important question you asked. My answer, like all my answers, is going to be unique and based on my personal preferences and choices I have made. Everybody has made different choices. We haven't made the choices on discounting. So I don't know the theory, but of course I have been in companies where I've worked in companies where discounting as a strategy to grow has been rampantly employed. First I'll tell you, an investment is not an input. An investment from investor is an outcome. An outcome, and the input to that outcome is your plan, of course, and then the demonstration of that plan. So initial set of, let's say, angel investors, or let's say even seed investors to a great extent, will be total believers. They do not really think about anything about the plan. You may have made some Excel sheets and everything, but then they are believing in you as a person. And then they are believing in the problem statement as a whole. That they believe that this problem needs to be solved, and they believe in your ability, and that is how that capital comes. Now, how do you put that capital to good use? I would first start with your customer and what is the mind space that you want to occupy for your customer. First of all, define your customer. Even though, let's say you are increasing income for, let's say, rice farmers, are they your customers? If you ask this fundamental question, right, it looks very fundamental, right? I do not believe that they are your customers. They are the supply side. The customer is ultimately the buyer of the produce of the farmer. What do they want? And work backwards from that plan and show an increasing amount of traction to get there. Second is define your right to win in the market. What is your right to win? Your right to win cannot be your emotion and passion. Your right to win cannot be your sense of purpose. It has to be much more tangible than that. You have to define that, okay, my right to win is this differentiated product. I mean, maybe it's a value-added product, or if it is it cannot be a simple packaging gimmick. Many people put that. I see a lot of products with added vitamins and all that stuff. It's like, I don't think they are really big differentiators in the minds of the customer. Right? So what is your right to win? And in order for that, and sometimes the right to win requires investment. You have to probably put a factory, or you have to put a supply chain. Things are going to be subscale. You need money for that. So if you raise money and spend that money, and that is why it is called investment. Spend that money in building that right to win. It could be a simple, it could be a website where you are taking your products to the rest of the communities. and today you don't really need a website. There are tens of out-of-the-box e-commerce portals that are available. If you have 10-15 SKUs, you can just get out in the market. Or you want to say, but people end up spending that money on customer acquisition and spend it on social platforms, send it on third-party websites. They do not have a distribution strategy. They do not have a differentiated product. And then they discount, because now the product is not selling itself. So the place where you put a price is not appealing to the customer. You have to now discount. When that happens, that's a death spiral. Because now you have discounted, two things happen, right? You're out of cash very soon. Second is, your customers are conditioned to a certain price point and a certain discount expectations. At Jumbo Tape, let me tell you this, right? We face one of the heaviest price competitions this sector has seen. And if you Google the media, you will know what kind of competitors we face, how much capital they raised. The one thing I said, it's a two-party player. The competitor is, I am here, the competitor comes here. Now, the easiest thing for me to do to continue to show growth or whatever is, I can go here. Now, so a deep pocket competitor will come here. It's a race to the bottom. You can't win that game. So now you differentiate. Then we said, what is the competitor not doing well? Reliable supply chain. If you say, आज market में जाके आज 3 बजे तक ऑर्डर करो, अगले दिन मिलेगा, कौन सा वो है, जम्बो टेल का नाम है. We said that is our USP, that is our right to win. And we said why? Because the customer really cared for product on the shelf. He is a customer, we observed that he was even willing to buy in MRP from a nearby shop to serve his consumers. So we understood all these dynamics and we invested our money in building the supply chain technologies, invested in network design. We did discount. We spent money, sure. So when that happens, right, two things are happening. Now your demand is with you, you are self-selecting the customer base. Second is, the investor's money is actually spent in assets. You're creating assets, you're creating sticky customers. Well, that's the first asset. Second is your real technology, IP. Third is your processes and your capability and capacity to serve the entire industry. Then more money will follow even if you are running out of cash. But if you have taken the same amount, not put in a technology or creating the assets, and I'll give a very more meaningful, it just come to my mind. Let's say you got all paper, right? At the end of the day, let's say $10 million is all cash and everything is in paper in front of you, and you want to cross ocean to get to the next island of prosperity. You can use this to build the best ship that can cross, or you can create paper boats. Discounting is like that. You just keep on creating these paper boats and you will have a sense of progress and you will see more throughput and all those things, but you have more wherewithal. But if you use this $10 million, you may probably still be the same island, but you have a better ship that you can cross oceans. So that's where I say that do not discount, invest in capabilities, hire the right talent. You may get a sense of stagnation, which is through your product market fit, but that's a good thing to do. We were in Bangalore for 5 full years until we perfected our supply chain to operate below 5% cost, which is our right to win. I think we are probably out of time.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I am. We also have the minister coming in later in the day. Thanks so much, Karthik. It was very, very insightful. I had Aditya from the audience excitedly sending me messages saying this is so useful. He's about to supply vehicles to Jumbo Tail in Bangalore.
Yes, Bangalore.
Very nice. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So glad to see you here.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful insights. Now I'll request Mr. Karthik to felicitate Port Hanisha Vaswani ma'am. No, sir. So it's one Stanford graduate felicitating the other Stanford graduate. Yeah.
I'm just